Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. Hello, Crystal. I see you there. Appreciate everybody stopping in this evening. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the data centers. I know that's been a hot topic for this group for a long time. Well, since the bill was introduced and passed back in the last legislative session. And we're going to talk about that tonight. See, Morgan is here. That's the important person I was looking for. Glad you're here. And we've got a few other little things to finish up the meeting with, but right now, we're going to talk with Morgan King from the West Virginia Citizen Action. Uh, Morgan was born and raised in Charleston. She's currently the West Virginia Citizen Action Climate and Energy Program Manager. She's working on such things as petrochemicals, hydrogen, CCS, which I'm not familiar with. Maybe you can tell us about that in a minute, and community air monitoring. She previously worked on climate issues in the state with the Climate Reality Project, and the West Virginia Rivers Coalition. She was selected for the Carbon Removal Justice Fellowship hosted by the American University and the National Wildlife Federation, which aimed to center environmental justice in carbon removal policy. Her academic background focused on improving access to clean water and energy and ensuring a just transition to address the climate emergency. Morgan is a Fulbright and Marshall Scholar, opportunities which allowed her to live in Spain and England for 3 years after college. And in Madrid, she introduced the Sustainable Development Goals to high schoolers. I was going to say high school children, but I guess same thing. She earned a master's degree in environmental systems engineering from University College London and a master's in public policy from the University of Cambridge. And she has a degree in civil engineering from West Virginia University. So she's been almost around the world and learned a lot of things. So I'm glad she's here in West Virginia to help us out. So welcome, Morgan. I'm glad you're here. We're really glad you're here tonight to talk about the data centers and give us a little update on what's happening around West Virginia in there. And we will be, of course, taping this tonight. Pardon me? One thing I forgot to tell you was please keep your microphones muted during this evening unless you have some kind of a question, then you can use there at the bottom of the screen. There should be an icon with a hand wherever my hand is, and you can push that and it'll show me that you've raised your hand to speak, and then we can ask questions later on. So anyway, Morgan, if you're ready to go, we are ready, and I will hand the microphone over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Rick, and the rest of the Indivisible group here in West Virginia. I'm really happy to be here. Um, I have some slides, if that's all right, that I shared them. I find that oftentimes having a visual helps a little more. I'm a visual learner, so I'm going to try to
Absolutely.
get that up right now, so that you all don't just have to stare at my face talking. So let me see here. This should, uh, hopefully you should see that now. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with data centers across the state in West Virginia and what's going on with House Bill 2014. I do want to give a little bit of background. I'd be remiss not to mention the organization that employs me and allows me to do this work around data centers in the state. West Virginia Citizen Action Group's been around for over 50 years, and we've been working to advocate for better public policy, the rights of individuals, a clean environment, and a stronger democratic process. And we pretty much have three programmatic areas. One is the climate and environmental action area. That's the program that I manage. We're a team of three currently and about to grow that to a fourth member soon. We also have a program on fighting for accessible and affordable healthcare. And then finally, a program on democracy and fighting for a stronger democracy as the rise of fascism occurs. And why I want to share this is I'd say the data center discourse oftentimes is put around environmental issues, but really I think it intersects just about every issue that our state is facing. Of course, we'll hear a bit about how these data centers are resource sucking and take up our energy and our water and have impacts to local environments. But they also are stripping away tax dollars that would be critical for strengthening our local government systems, our schools, our local hospitals. We're seeing across the state hospitals close. We're seeing SNAP benefits and Affordable Care Act benefits being stripped away from West Virginians who rely on them, all while some of these data centers are getting handouts from our state and federal government. So I'd say really this issue is one of the most intersectional ones that we're facing right now. And I think, and I'd like to think that there's something for everyone, regardless of whether you are a tree hugger like me or an environmentalist, to being passionate about healthcare or other issues. I'd say it all fits in together. So in West Virginia, we've seen our governor and legislature lay the regulatory groundwork to make West Virginia the next data center hub of the country. But we see massive environmental, economic, and health risks to nearby communities. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about those, some of the biggest data center proposals in the state specifically, and their impacts to local communities. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some policy interventions and opportunities to fight back against these data centers, and specifically around HB 2014 and what we can do to address that in the upcoming legislative session. So to give a little bit of background, I'm sure if you all are here tonight too to hear about data centers, this is not the first time you're hearing about it in our state. Um, and if you asked me a year ago what I would be working on, I never would have said this year it would be data centers. Like I knew they were growing. I know there's a growing demand in data and energy for data centers. But I never would have expected this to become our state governor's priority because really last year we were living in the land of other experimental technologies such as dirty hydrogen, chemical recycling, all of which are still posing threats to West Virginia, but we were very much focused on some of these other nascent and dangerous technologies. And something I like to share at the front of any sort of data center talk is this question of whether or not this AI boom and this data center boom is a bubble and whether or not we should expect there to be a bust. So, just with any aspect in the economy, and we see an increase in demand for it, such as AI and cloud computing systems, we will need to see an increase in whatever that service is to meet that. So in this case, it is data centers, and we are going to see more needing to be built. If you use your cell phones, if you use your computers, we're all relying on these AI and cloud computing systems for our day to day. But the question is whether this demand of data is going to continue to grow exponentially or linearly, or if at some point it's going to stagnate off and plateau. And at that point, are we going to see a bust? Are we going to see more data centers proposed than are needed? And if that's the case, are we going to see West Virginia facing the brunt of that? Um, and are we, what we're seeing right now is companies are racing to be the first to build as many as possible so that they get the benefit of it. And I think that is really a flaw in our economic system, in that we are not really ethically or sustainably thinking about what we're building and why we're building it, but just rushing to meet this demand that may not be long lasting. So, right now in West Virginia, there are four notable data center proposals in the state. We have rumors of them other ones in Wood County, in Monroe County, several confirmed more in the Eastern Panhandle. But the ones that are really of note at the moment are ones that are the larger scale data centers. Proposed one in Tucker County, that's Fundamental Data's Ridgeline facility in Davis. Uh, Two others are in the southern half of the state, both in Mingo County, by Transgas. They're two identical data centers. One is on the southern border of Mingo County, and the other is on the northern border of Mingo County. And then finally, there's another data center proposed on the Ohio River in Mason County by Fidelis New Energy. And these data centers are known as high impact data centers. And they were proposed really when this House Bill 2014 was making its rounds of the legislature. Governor Morrissey said at the start of the legislative session that data centers would be his priority. And the legislature, on his behalf, introduced House Bill 2014, which is the Certified Microgrid Program, which would enable microgrids for data center power production with a number of concerns, such as the overreach of local control, water use issues, energy use issues, a misuse or unfair distribution of property tax dollars. And the goal was to incentivize and encourage data centers to develop in our state. So this picture after he signed this piece of legislation that passed is actually in Point Pleasant in Mason County, honoring the Monarch Data Center campus, which is proposed by Fidelis in Mason County. But it's not currently under construction yet. And some of the key concerns around this House Bill 2014 are centered around the tax structure for data centers and microgrids. I'd say it was probably one of the most contentious parts of the legislation. Originally, the bill proposed about 100% of the taxes go to the state, which would essentially create a slush fund for the governor to eliminate the personal income tax. When that was proposed, county commissioners across the political spectrum were fairly outraged and came to the Capitol to advocate against that. And so organizations that are more progressive, like my own at West Virginia Citizen Action Group, were advocating against this bill for the numerous reasons that I'm talking about already and will be talking about in a minute. But we were seeing conservative county commissioners come in and also be against it because this bill strips away tax dollars that are critical for roads, for schools, for local social services in their county. And so, as a compromise, and I would say not really a fair compromise, the bill was amended to allow 30% of those property taxes to stay in the county where that data center is located, and 50% go to the Personal Income Tax Reduction Fund. 10% is now going to the remaining 54 counties on a per capita basis. And then the other 10% is going to support some funds administered at the state level, such as ones by the Water Development Authority and the newly created Electric Grid Stabilization and Security Fund. Another contentious part of this legislation is around local control. And this means that local governments were prohibited from enacting any ordinances or regulations at the local level. So, for instance, you might see across the country local communities having concerns around a data center for its light pollution or its noise pollution or how much water it extracts out of the ground to cool the computers. Well, those types of concerns are usually addressed through local ordinances. So maybe a reasonable ordinance would be if a data center is built, there can only be noise pollution and light pollution during certain hours of the day because communities are living nearby. Our local governments in West Virginia for these larger data centers or high impact data centers with microgrids cannot enact any of these types of ordinances. It would prohibit it. And it basically makes it so that only the state government can enact those types of ordinances. So I want to talk a little bit about the risks around data centers generally and what we might see around these four larger data centers already proposed on after HB 2014 was introduced and passed. And so one of the key environmental risks uh, that affects people's health, their environment, and their economy is the water demand. So large data centers use a ton of water. We're talking on average 5 million gallons of water per day. And for context, that's about the use of water use of a town that has about anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 people. The largest city in our state, Charleston, is under 50,000 people. So a large data center could use up to the water that Charleston uses in a day, which is hard to believe. It's essentially adding a whole new urban water usage in our state. And to many, folks might think, well, West Virginia's water abundant. We have floods a lot, right? What's the big deal? And that's often a myth. That's not that we have floods, but this idea that we are water abundant and shouldn't have to worry about using that much water. Across our state, we're continuing to see water scarcity in terms of clean drinking water, in terms of folks not even having adequate water in the tap. And just for example, in Tucker County last summer, where one of the large data centers is proposed, the town of Thomas, right next to Davis, was on a boil water notice for pretty much the whole summer because their drinking water source was depleted during a drought, and they had to draw water from another water source, which was not treated in the same way, and therefore they had to be on a long-term boil water notice. And this is in the same area that they want to build a large data center. So we're already seeing our water needs not being met across West Virginia and likely bringing in this scale of data centers to some of the more impacted areas of our state, such as Mingo County, where the entire county is without clean drinking water right for a long time. Uh, in Tucker County, where you might think of it as water abundant given all of the natural elements, but just went through a drought last year, or on Mason County in the Ohio River, where folks are dealing with up and down the Ohio River PFAS contamination in their own drinking water systems. So this impact of water needs for data centers is, I'd say, one of the biggest ones that could affect the livelihood of our state. On top of that, there's, of course, the land use component. These high impact data centers with microgrids take up a large amount of land. And if they are not strategically zoned or located, it can take up critical space that houses important habitats and ecosystems. Looking at the one in Tucker County, right next to the Mon National Forest, it's a place where the local ecosystems and land are going to be impacted as a result of that development. Even more data centers are known to produce large amounts of noise and light pollution that can cause health impacts and disturbances to local communities and local ecosystems. So it can affect migratory birds, migratory species, and their pathways as well. And then on top of that, there's a number of emissions that can be greenhouse gas emissions that exist in the operation of data centers, just in the data center itself. And then when we're talking about microgrids, so the data centers proposed in West Virginia all are tied to gas-based systems. There are going to be other levels of emissions tied to those data centers as well that will pollute the air, the water, and the soil. So I want to bring back this map real quick of the data center proposals in West Virginia. So here's Tucker County at number 1, the 2 in Mingo County at numbers 2 and 3, and then over here in the west, the one in Mason County. So I want to just so you can get an idea of where they are geographically. And this right here, don't get too caught up in all of the numbers and the chemicals, is a chart of the um, air pollution permitted for each of these locations. So in Tucker County and both of the ones in Mingo County, there's proposals for a new gas-fired power plant to be on the microgrid to power the data centers in each of those three places. And these chemicals here are the emissions that would be permitted in the air permit and have been permitted in the air permits by the Department of Environmental Protection. And so you can see it's what I think is most significant to look at for your all sake, sorry there, is this total PM. That stands for total particulate matter. And particulate matter is like dust, it's things you don't want to breathe, a really good indicator for respiratory disease. And um, it's permitted at just under 100 tons per year, which is a significant amount of pollution. Uh, each of the gas-fired power plants in Mingo County are permitted for more than double that of Tucker County at 215 tons per year of total particulate matter. And then in Mason County, this is a bit of a not as fair to compare here, um, because in Mason County they're proposing a number of projects, and it's gets very confusing to explain. But essentially, they're proposing a bioenergy and carbon capture plant, which would burn wood chips to create a fuel. That fuel is to help with the startup of a gas-based hydrogen plant, which would then power on a microgrid the data center. And so these emissions right here are the ones that are permitted or about to be permitted for the bioenergy wood burning plant. But that's only one piece of the air pollution because we don't have the numbers on the gas hydrogen plant just yet. But you can see this is adding a significant amount of air pollution into the air. And to give you an idea of what these numbers are at scale, the two in Mingo County at about 430 tons per year of particulate matter. So adding these two together in the 400 range would become the third largest polluter in the state of West Virginia, behind only the John Amos Power Plant in Nitro and the Harrison Power Plant on the Ohio River. So we're talking about adding new power plants that would be up in the top three of air pollution across our state. And on top of those environmental risks, which of course pose health risks as well, given that our state is ranking first or among the first across the country in respiratory disease and cardiovascular disease and all of the concerning health outcomes that are only worsened with more pollution. We also see a number of economic risks tied into building more data centers in communities. We are going to have to produce significantly more electricity and energy to be able to meet this demand of these high impact data centers. And it is likely to increase electricity costs. So, one point that is often made is, well, these bigger data centers proposed right now are on microgrids, meaning they're building power sources for the data center that would not serve our general grid, but would just serve the data center on a microgrid. So folks might ask, well, how can that increase the electricity costs and energy demand for everyday folks like you and me that might be using Appalachian Electric Power or Mon Power or wherever you get your electricity, unless you're off grid? And the answer is goes back to HB 2014 at the legislature. So within that bill, there is a provision that requires our coal-fired powered plants to operate at a 60-ish% capacity factor, meaning essentially the utilities and the coal companies were scared about these microgrids taking away money and electricity potential from them. And so they put in provisions that require our coal plants to operate at a certain level, even if it's not even if it's not the demand that's needed, um, which then is artificially extending the life of these coal plants, artificially running them when they're not always needed at that level, and thus increasing electricity costs for everyday folks. And so we've seen just across data centers in the country, wholesale electricity costs increase as much as 267% more than it did 5 years ago. Um, and we're seeing that especially in our neighboring state of Virginia, where they have areas like Data Center Alley that has some of the largest concentration of data centers in the country. And ironically, in places like Virginia, where they are embracing renewable energy more than our own state, we actually are seeing in those parts of Virginia electricity rates go down. So there are studies that show data centers, of course, produce more energy and increase electricity costs for folks, but they would be much higher of an increase if they were relying on fossil fuels the way we are in West Virginia. So the embracing of renewables in Virginia is helping it so that data centers are raising power costs, but not as significantly as they would in places like with coal, like our own. So all of that sounds really awful, and it is. It's not the most empowering, I'd say, presentation, but it is the reality we're facing. And I think at this point, a lot of folks, when they hear about these data center proposals and the level of environmental impact that they are going to have on our state and economic impact that they're going to have on our state, a lot of folks feel hopeless because this HB 2014 really does take away a lot of power from everyday citizens like you and me. But I still have hope because there are a number of policy, scientific, and community interventions that we can do collectively that can prevent some of the worst impacts of these data centers from happening in our state. Because one, they've not been built yet. There have been some permits have been issued, but they've also not been built yet. And we're at a critical threshold right now, especially before this upcoming legislative session, where we can take action from all parts of our movement to prevent these dangerous data centers from being built in our backyards. And so this graph right here is pretty, or this image right here is pretty, sometimes can be a little confusing, but essentially it is meant to represent our movement, our progressive movement of folks in whatever area. So let's say West Virginia in this case. We have folks that are working on the inside, what we call the inside game, working to change policy, to change our elected officials' minds, using science and evidence and political savviness to affect things from the inside. We have different folks across our movement working on alternatives and personal transformation. So think direct services, think mutual aid, food banks, all of these aspects that are building alternative systems beyond our often broken government system to keep people alive and functioning and sustaining themselves. We have other folks engaging in mass protest and their First Amendment rights. And then we also have this idea of structure organizing or power organizing, where through building a base of people and leaders and resources, we're establishing organizations like Indivisible, organizations like West Virginia Citizen Action Group, and our other organizations across the state and country that are creating a political home for folks like y'all here today to push back against some of these dangerous ideas, whether that's data centers or whether that's whatever new dangerous fascist idea is being presented at our federal level. Um, so creating these structures so that we have an organized way to push back and feed back into that inside game to apply pressure, to leverage power, to advocate for change. And so the idea is that we've got folks on all ends of our ideology and all ends of our theory of change, folks that want to be on the street all day protesting, folks that want to be talking on doors and building relationships one-on-one, folks giving out resources through mutual aid, folks talking to folks that we might see as the opposition, such as conservatives or folks that are elected and doing the things that are hurting us. We need all of these people working together cohesively, doing what we do best to really be a strong movement and have that inside and outside game support one another. And so that's where West Virginia Citizen Action really comes in. We're more in the structure organizing place where we are engaging with policy and we're also engaging in alternative systems and building up leaders and political homes and also supporting mass protest. So trying to feed into all of these different aspects to uh, build up a large enough base so that they can't ignore us. And what I think is a really powerful way, and I would be remiss to not mention it because this is a program that I work on a lot at Citizen Action Group, to mention is our community science program. And I consider this an intervention that we are making that is both inside game and outside game. It's organizing in the sense that we're training leaders, we're holding one-on-ones, we're knocking on doors, we're mobilizing members, we're having community meetings around these different site fights of data centers. And we're using air monitoring as the tool to do that, the tool to organize. But on the other hand, monitoring the air in places where data centers are proposed is allowing us to develop proactive legislation, provide evidence and research that enables us to meet with elected officials and present our case with science and evidence, and also resources that can help us amend HB 2014 to be less harmful. And so we've been putting up air quality sensors around the state. We've installed over 60 now in the state, with support and partnerships of groups all over the state as well, and along the Ohio River with Mid-Ohio Valley Climate Action. We've trained folks with Tucker United and helped them access air quality sensors, and they've put up and built a network of a dozen plus air quality sensors, continuously tracking the air before this proposal of this data center could be built. And what's really exciting is it tests for some of the worst forms of pollution, such as particulate matter 2.5, a type of particulate matter that we looked at in that big chart a few slides ago. It also tests for these chemicals called volatile organic compounds, which are chemicals that can have adverse health effects. And what's really exciting is that folks anywhere can check their air quality from these air quality sensors. This is a really old image of the network that we've built across the state. Like, for instance, now there's a dozen right here in Tucker County and more throughout here on the Ohio River. But you can, on your phone or your computer or on an app, access this data in real time and see what the air quality is closest to you. And this really serves, I think, as every bit of that movement ecology chart because it's aiding science and research that can influence policy. It's helping us organize in communities and provide a resource to folks that are facing site fights. It's providing a direct service to people because there's only 8 functioning state government air quality sensors across West Virginia. 8. So, for instance, in Mango County, down here, we've put up some air quality sensors, but the government regulatory sensors that are closest to Mango County are in Huntington, Charleston, and Lewisburg. So, Lewisburg, Huntington, and Charleston's air is not really representative of that of Mango County, but that is the data that our government is often relying on as the closest sensors to them. And so these community sensors give us a better picture of what the air is actually like in these communities, especially before these microgrids, gas plants, and data centers are built, which I think with the level of organizing and opposition that's happening across the state, we are in progress of stopping them. And I can share these slides after, but this is just a chart that shows you how to interpret your air quality. Basically, green's good, purple and maroon's bad. So I want to share some opportunities to get involved. One, West Virginia Citizen Action Group does organizing trainings across the state. We train folks on this movement ecology and how you can fit into the picture and fight for whatever issue you care about. If that's data centers, this is a great place for you because we've been working on data centers for um, pretty significantly for the past year and have a long history of working on site fights. We, of course, host our community science program. And so anyone can become a community science by simply offering a piece of their home or their business or their community center to install an air quality sensor. So, for instance, these ones are on a home, and this one on the side is actually, we've partnered with some municipalities too. So we've put them in South Charleston on their city building, the town of Glasgow in Kanawha County, and the town of Gilbert in Mingo County. And again, here's the QR code and link to check that air quality. And finally, another really powerful way that I've been able to meet folks from all ends of the political spectrum, but meet folks where they're at, is by canvassing around data centers. We go to these communities and work with local residents to knock on doors and see if folks are even aware these projects are being built in their backyard. That's me walking around a neighborhood right next to where the data center, hydrogen plant, and bioenergy plant is being proposed in Mason County. And many folks had heard rumors of this, but did not realize this was happening right in their backyard until someone from CAG came and knocked on their door and shared information about how to get involved. And so, finally, here's a list of some ways to take action. Citizen Action Group is always welcoming members. We are a member-based power building organization, so our board is elected by our members. Our our vo Anyone that is a member can run for our board. All our members can access our trainings and committees and advocacy work for free. Becoming a member, it's about $1.25 a month or $15 a year, and that helps us sustain our work because we have folks doing this full time, and helps us access the tools that we need to keep these running. We have some trainings and committee meetings coming up. So monthly we meet to scheme around climate and environmental issues, notably data centers. We will be finalizing our legislative priorities for the upcoming year on December 3rd at 6 p.m. I can send out links for all of these registrations to Rick after too, if anyone is interested. In Charleston, I'm sorry, I failed to mention the city there. In Charleston, we're having an organizing training on Saturday, December 6th at our office. I'll send more details about that as well. And then we're going to be opening up an organizing night school starting in January 2026. And that's essentially a Zoom that's an hour or so a week for several weeks. And this is taking the place of our traditional organizing trainings that take place on Saturdays all day. Sometimes it can be hard to get a whole day off to come to an organizing training. So this night school is an option for folks to get involved in this work without having to commit a full day. Of course, hosting an air quality sensor, getting involved in canvassing, door knocking, some of our grassroots organizing. And I know I was asked to speak more about HB 2014, and I do want to share that a lot of our policy and legislative work happens in this climate committee. So folks in our climate committee will likely be supporting us at the legislature if anyone is ever interested in meeting with legislators, interested in coming to the Capitol for lobby days, we can support that as well. If there's anything that you want to work on, you can bring that to that committee and we can work with you to make that happen. It's all member driven and member led. So we are always trying to build our member base because the more we have of us together, the stronger we can be. So here's my contact information. Feel free to email me at any point. I put our membership link again here. This is like my personal one. We're doing an end of year membership drive where every staffer is competing to raise the most members. So that's my personal link. But I can provide the general membership link as well. It's on our homepage at wvcag.org. And with that, here's our social media for anyone that is online and would like to follow us and stay updated and involved. And with that, I'll stop. You don't have to listen to me any longer, and I'll take any questions or comments y'all have.
Well, while we're waiting for questions, I want to thank you for coming tonight, Morgan. That was such a good presentation. It was very informative. I know, like I said before, we've talked about this for well, since the bill was introduced, and we've heard a lot from Tucker County, but we haven't had too much information from down around Mingo and Pleasants County and Mason County and places like that. So we're happy you were here tonight. I do have one question for you. Um, you were talking about the data centers requiring so much water to cool the computers and that sort of thing. Has there been any kind of talk about reservoirs at these places? Making a reservoir that they could recycle the water, or is there a problem with recycling it? Or do you know anything like that?
So, in the case of Tucker County, my understanding is it's focusing more on groundwater, and the same with Mason, that is what we expect to happen. Of course, it's on the Ohio River as well. Um, so that is also an option. I've not heard much talk around establishing standalone reservoirs um, for recycling. That is the recycling of water was a proposal by the company Adams Fork in Mingo County, but around the ammonia plant. So that's a whole separate project, but it's the same company. And so the same company that's trying to build these data centers in Mingo originally proposed to build the world's largest ammonia plant if it operated at their permitted level in the same piece of land as Mingo County. Then, with the administration changed and some of the carbon capture tax credits were going away, it was less financially viable, and the company shifted to data centers. But so they've not officially stopped the ammonia plant or said it's over, but it is very unlikely to be built. And it seems like the company is shifting more to data centers. But with that ammonia plant, they were claiming that they were going to recycle like underground mine pool water, which sounds nice in theory, but has a lot of like structural concerns of how they are actually going to filter some of the contaminants out of the water for it to actually be viable to cool safely the computer or to cool the ammonia plant pieces. And so the same concern if they did end up proposing using mine pool water for cooling at the data center, some of the same concerns of being able to recycle it out of that mine pool um, could be applicable.
Okay. Well, thanks. The reason I asked that is I'm familiar with Mount Storm Power Plant and some of the building trades people I worked with, worked up there, and they have a huge pool up there that they use to cool their coal-fired plants and things in there. So I just wondered if that might be something that could happen. Cosby has a question, so I will
Yes,
let
sir.
her go ahead.
Hi, Morgan. Can you tell us a little bit more about the amendments to 2014 that you all are proposing?
Yeah, so in addition, like my day job is with West Virginia Citizen Action Group, but I'm also a volunteer member of the West Virginia Environmental Council, and that is our lobbying voice at the Capitol. So organizations like CAG, West Virginia Rivers, this West Virginia Sierra Club, and many others are pooling their money together because we can't necessarily all employ lobbyists full time on environmental issues. to have a couple lobbyists representing all of our environmental issues as a coalition at the Capitol. And so that's the West Virginia Environmental Council. And so CAG and other partners are working in the e-council to finalize what we're trying to amend right now, but likely it will be amendments to rescind some of the local control aspects, um, in the sense that trying to get back as much autonomy to local governments as possible to dictate what's going to happen in their communities rather than the state make that dictation. Uh, Another piece would be around water. So Rick had the great question around water reservoirs. And a big question is whether or not our state can enact any level of regulation around large levels of water quantity extracted from the ground and what constitutes a large level. And are there, if they're going to do that, are there perhaps additional taxes or methods we can employ to at least extract more benefits from the companies that are going to be extracting our critical resources at no cost to them? So, those are a couple of the ideas. Um, Also around the tax benefits. I mean, in a lot of folks' opinions, 30% of property taxes staying in the county is not sufficient when 50% is going to the state slush fund for income tax reduction. That one might be a harder fight, but nevertheless, it's a worthwhile one to try to increase the amount of benefits that flow back into the place that's hosting the data center.
Yeah,
So those are just a few.
I was up in Tucker a couple of weeks ago to one of their meetings, and uh, one of their biggest concern is that they don't have the infrastructure for any type of hazard that could happen in that beautiful microgrid they want there. So, 30% won't do it, you know. They're going to need paid firefighters and paid EMS. It's all volunteer. They don't have ladder trucks and just a million things. I'm sure you know that, but it's really impactful when you actually go there, talk to the townspeople, and see exactly where they're putting it. It blows your mind. It really blows your mind. I have just one more quick question. When you have your trainings and so forth, do you do those over Zoom at all so people in other parts of the state can participate?
So, we are going to be launching our first ever Zoom trainings in the new year with the organizing night school program.
Oh, so
So
that will
those will
be
be,
okay.
yes. So we're still figuring out some fine-tuned details and hoping to release that registration on our website and via our email list. Um, in the over the next few weeks. And so that will not start until the new year. And we would give a few weeks once we release that information for folks to register. So it won't be like a super quick turnaround. Traditionally, we've held trainings in person a full day. We've had some issues in the past month, quite honestly. We're going to have some in Fairmont and in Morgantown and ended up only getting a couple registrants. So there was some scheduling conflicts where we had a number of residents that wanted it that day and then it just fell through. So I think Zoom is going to be a way that we can more effectively reach more people in a more accessible manner.
That's great. Thank you.
I will say that you all also do some other Zoom meetings on occasion. I know I went to one of them, I think last month for some planning, and it turned out to be a data center heavy meeting. But I think it was more for a planning type of meeting, but very interesting. I got to say that.
Thank you. Yes. So we have, yeah, our each of our three program areas. I think you were at our climate committee for the start of November, and we try to have a committee meeting every month. So we have our climate committee, our democracy committee just launched this month, and our healthcare committee. And these are all kind of member-based where folks can help shape the direction that we do our work. Of course, um, as a statewide nonprofit, we have some grant funding, but because we are a power organization, because we're a member-based organization, the work that we do should represent the majority of our members at the bare minimum and their interests.
Do we have any other questions for Morgan tonight? Let's see, I was going to look on here. Okay. One of the questions was, is this being recorded? Yes. And it will be distributed tomorrow to all of this Indivisible group's membership. And we will also add this to our channel on YouTube. So if someone needs to see it or would like to see it, couldn't be here tonight or whatever, it's available. It will be available there, probably on YouTube tomorrow evening. But I'll try to get all this information out in the morning to all of our members so that they'll have that as well. So, all right. One more time around the horn here to see. I don't see any
I
other.
have a quick question.
Oh, go right ahead.
Morgan, have you given any thought to, let's say HB 2014 has changed to where 70% of the revenue goes back to the county? Now, up here in Tucker County, I anecdotally speaking for Tucker United, we don't want it up here. Shifting that amount of revenue strategically, is there any thought being given to where it would say turn the tide of people wanting the data centers?
That's a great question. I could certainly see, for instance, folks in like Department of Commerce, Chamber of Commerce's locally, and also county commissions perhaps still wanting it. But we've
Well,
not
they
really
want it now, but excuse me.
exactly. And so I would say at Citizen Action Group, let's say we get 70%, which I will be very surprised if we do, just noting the
Sure.
makeup of our legislature, but let's just say that happens.
Yeah.
There's still the same number of issues around, water usage, energy usage, the requirement within HB 2014 to have our coal plants operating at an unreasonable capacity factor. And so I think that's a big question a lot of progressive groups are thinking about right now, not just in our state, but countrywide, is like, what does a responsible data center look like, and where do they go, if anywhere? And what I can say for at least Mingo, Mason, and Tucker is there is not a responsible data center that can go in those locations. Um, Gosh, in Mason County too, the one that's proposed there along with those other power plants that are essentially experiments because they've never been those types of plants of gas-based hydrogen and bioenergy with carbon capture has never been built to scale in our country at the scale they're trying to do it. This community is directly across the river from the Gavin power plant, which is in Ohio, but it's, rivers are just artificial borders, or, the air flows one side of the river to the other, and it is one of the dirtiest power plants in the country. This community is facing some of the worst air pollution along the Ohio River, and the addition of these power plants to dirty power plants to power this data center is a non-starter. The cumulative impacts these folks face is more harmful than the jobs or economic development in that county, even if it brings in 70% of property taxes. Because also, frankly, I didn't even cover this in the presentation, but data centers do not create a significant number of jobs in the long term. Of course, there are construction jobs, but oftentimes with any development project, construction jobs are not often sourced locally and they're brought in from other locations. So it's not a sustainable, long-lasting economic injection to the local community.
I think that we need to get into House Bill 2014 when they start to amend that. If they look at it this legislative session, is to guarantee that West Virginia workers at least would construct the buildings and the power plants, to my understanding, probably would be brought in on on train cars or flatbeds and put into place, and there may be a few people come in to hook them up, but basically they'll be pretty much ready to go when they get here. But at least we could, try to put something in there to make sure that at least West Virginia workers get a chance at that labor and construction jobs for the whole process, because it's coming whether we want it or not. They already forced it down our throats, and we need to get something out of it besides a little bit of money going to the state. And when you look at the bill, zero money goes to our schools. So out of that, so it would have to come out of the county 30%, and they may be a little stingy with that too. So
Absolutely, all great points. I want to go ahead and drop in the chat my email just in case anyone has follow-up questions, and I will send my slide deck to Rick with some relevant links to that I failed to include in the slide deck.
I'll make sure to get those out with the summary tomorrow.
I see a question, is there any chance that they won't be built? I think there is, and I think we see a strong chance. Um, I don't say that in the sense that we can just say, oh, okay, we're good. There's a lot of work to be done to stop these data centers, but I do see a pathway to stop these particularly dirty and dangerous ones, such as the ones in Tucker, Mingo, and Mason. And I think we're already, on the way to do that. A lot of pushing back against certain site fights is a process of delaying. We saw in Mingo County 2 extensions get granted to the air construction permit. I have never seen 2 extensions be granted by the DEP in many, many years. Usually you get 1 extension when a few people complain. Uh, and so that in particular extended the period of time, which makes it more expensive for the developers. And these air construction permits are just the first of many that each of these sites need. So it is a tedious battle, but it's not just a battle, it's a long term. It's not just a single sprint, it's a marathon. And so that's why it's really important now that we're building up power and membership and collectively working together against these sites, because it's not going to happen in a month or two. It's going to take a few years.
What kinds of things do you propose that people who, like, for instance, I'm up here in Mon County, and I just can't get to these counties where things are, the real fights are happening. So what kinds of things can we be doing from a distance that would help, other than going down there, attending their meetings and helping to protest?
I think there are a lot of ways to get involved remotely in particular. And so, for instance, one of them is strategizing and providing your own insight into what you think needs to be done from a policy level, for example. So we have, like I mentioned at CAG, these committees month to month where folks can participate and provide their support. Of course, there's opportunities to contact elected officials in these places, work with your own elected officials. In Mon County, you all have some of the best ones. Um, Delegate Hansen works with us quite a bit to develop proactive policy. Of course, there is direct action and protest. But I think on top of that, a lot of what we do is, on the ground in these communities. And I think supporting these local site fights, such as Tucker United, such as the communities working in Mason and in Mingo County, with your dollars is really powerful. At CAG, a lot of our grassroots organizing and canvassing money comes from our memberships. So we rely a lot on small dollar donations as well to power getting folks to these locations, or some of the residents that we work with that are frontline community members. We also are working to pay for them to get to the Capitol and meet with their legislators or help support them financially because they're taking time out of their day and their lives to fight these things. So I think a lot of opportunities over Zoom with your intellectual capital, with your time by making calls and emails, with your body with protesting, and then also with dollars. Money goes a long way in some of these fights.
One last chance for questions. I'll go through here again. I don't see anything. All right. Well, thank you very much tonight, Morgan, for being here. I'll tell you, that was such a good presentation and lots of good information tonight. So that helps everyone a lot. And I know tonight that there were people from, areas where they are working on putting in these data centers, and this information will help them as well. So appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, you're welcome back anytime, by the way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, I'll tell you, she did a great job. We'll have to have her back again. Appreciate everybody being here this evening. We're not going to take much more of your time. I just had a couple of comments that I want to let you know. I've got tomorrow when I send out the summaries, I'm also going to send a link to a story that I found in the West Virginia Watch online paper that I love. It's about the nationwide concern over data centers. So it's not just us. It's a major problem everywhere, and I think people are actually waking up to it and they're starting to fight it. So anyway, I'll put that link in there, and you can go to that article and read that if you want to. It's longer than I wanted to talk about tonight, so you can take a look at it tomorrow. And then let's see here. One thing that um, was on the Indivisible What's the Plan program today. I'll just pass along, and we'll probably talk about it again next week, but I'll let you guys go. It's called the We Ain't Buying It promotion, and they came up with a plan. It's actually a plan to stay out of the big stores for Thanksgiving Day, and try to shop in your local small businesses and that sort of thing. But I'll also put that into the summary, and you'll have that with all the other things tomorrow. So, do we have any questions or anything for the good of the order tonight? If not, then I hope you all got some good information, and I appreciate you coming, and we will talk to you next Thursday. Not next Thursday. We're not here. Sorry. Thanksgiving. Oh my gosh. We'll be here in I guess what is it? The 4th of December. We'll be back. So have a nice week off, and relax, and use that time to recharge yourself. And we will talk to you 2 weeks from now. Good night, everyone.